Hello everybody. We are going to continue on with our lecture for chapter 21 and then move on to the last lecture, which will be over chapter 22. So what you're looking at right now is a interior view of the museum that was created by Richard Meyer, and it's called the Stadthaus, and the date on this is 1993. So, with Richard Meyer, we know that he was very, very influenced by earlier architects such as Frank Lloyd Wright and his Guggenheim Museum, and even Le Corbusier's Villa Savoy. You can see that inclusion of white on the interiors here. However, we also know that he was very, very influenced by Cubism. And in fact, that is something I'd like you to know for your first significance, please. Influence of Cubism. Cubism is C-U-B-I-S-M. And if you haven't heard of it before, it is the style of art that was invented by Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque. So Meyer himself is known for his white structures, and these are oftentimes created with juxtaposing textures that will pair very smooth porcelain enameled panels next to very rusticated light colored marble. And you can see a little bit of that textural difference here. We have glass up here, smooth surfaces here, and even though there's no marble, you also see the smooth steel railings here of the walkway, and then a light colored wood here as well. So he is known for his white structures. Though Meyer is known for his white structures, however, he is also known for his extensive use of windows, and we see that here. And once again, I have to tell you that this view that your book uses, ever so slightly different than the one I'm using here, again, does not focus adequately on what makes Meyer's works very, very important. So I'm going to give you a couple of views here. So goodness, aren't they gorgeous? So this is a better view of that interior than what your book gives you. And then this is an exterior view here at night. And during the day, you can see that it actually backs up to a Gothic church that you see here. So going on from there, Meyer himself was a Pritzker Prize winning American architect. 1986 was when he won the Pritzker Prize, and he chosen to design the Ulm Stadthaus in Germany. It is essentially the State House, which is the assembly hall and exhibition center. The white circular structure at the base of the Gothic Ulm Minster is controversial at first for its stark modern forms, but how it compares to the Gothic structure next to it is it doesn't try to compete at all. It doesn't try to replicate that sense of historicism. So another significance I'd like you to know, please, is that he's known for his white structures. Another significance still is that this juxtaposes with the Gothic church behind it. Okay, this juxtaposes with the Gothic church behind it. So going on from there, when you look at these particular pieces, extensive use of light, you can see that. And what I also like about the use of white that he acknowledges is that the color of the white actually changes based on the atmosphere, time of day, and also the weather that comes through the area here. So let me tell you a little bit more about this. The main body of the building itself derives from its geometry of the cathedral and the square that it's in. It is based on a 9-square structural bay system augmented on 3 sides by concentric peripheral walls and modified and curtailed by intersecting axes and regular lines. So you can see that. You literally see curving lines that juxtapose, curving lines that juxtapose with straight lines. The main drum, now you might remember with our discussion of the Pantheon, the base of it, the main drum itself forms a functional counterpoint to the cathedral that is so focused on the vertical. So we have a focus on that horizontal, and with the cathedral itself more of a vertical. So, an asymmetrical stair and freestanding elevator afford access from the ground floor to the lecture hall and exhibition spaces within it, while a loggia and a bridge at the upper level link the restaurant to an interior foyer on the ground floor and the exhibition spaces above. So, you might remember our Guggenheim Museum, where there was an open courtyard or foyer, I should say, that was very, very much rounded, and then off of the sides were galleries for the art. That is what is being shown here as well. So another significance I'd like you to know, influence of Frank Lloyd Wright's Guggenheim Museum. Influence of Frank Lloyd Wright's Guggenheim Museum. The construction itself is using reinforced concrete as its frame and blockwork throughout, concrete blockwork throughout, with the inner 9 square cube faced in natural stone and the outer concentric screen walls in the restaurant that are actually clad in stucco on the exterior. The square is planted with sycamore trees around it to create an intimate pedestrian scale along with commercial frontage, while the area itself was repaved in accordance with the grid derived from the geometry of the cathedral itself. So it works with, but also doesn't seem to compete at all with the building that's located adjacent to it. So then therefore we also know that Meyer really considers the position of the buildings that he builds in relationship to the buildings around them. And that not only is very, very thoughtful to the spaces around the buildings, but also thoughtful to the design of the larger flow of the squares that these buildings inhabit. So another significance, please, is that his structures are known for working within an architectural site. In other words, let me say this a little bit better before you write this down. His works are known for considering architectural buildings around it. Okay, known for considering architectural buildings around it in the design of it. Okay, so the design itself is known for considering, again, the architecture that surrounds it. And that's very, very smart. He's not going to try to create something that is vertical here to compete with the church's steeple. Wouldn't be smart. He's also not going to try to work with it in terms of the ornamentation or with the color of stone that it has. He doesn't want to compete. So instead, he creates something completely different, and that is quite cool. Also, with the use of natural light and the white, it creates this beautiful kind of let's say light reflection that bounces off those white walls that allows it to be very, very well lit on a very bright day, and even not too poorly lit even on a day that's relatively dim, that allows that natural light to be used adequately. So another significance I'd like you to know is that he considers the use of light within an art museum. Considers the use of light within the art museum. So Richard Meyer's work's very, very interesting. If you've taken the 106 class with me, you might remember his High Museum. He also, if you've ever been to LA, he also did the art museum called the Getty Museum that is just south of LA. Pretty cool structure as well. And you actually have to take literally a tram to get up to it. It's kind of built on a cliffside. Pretty cool. All right, so the next piece on your list is something that I think is quite cool, and it is a furniture piece, and it is called the Lockheed Lounge. And this is created by a man named Mark Newsom. The date on this is 1986, and goodness, yeah, I want it. So this is made of riveted aluminum and a fiberglass chase, and it is a chase lounge. So it uses fiberglass reinforced polyester resin for its core, and it uses a blind riveted sheet aluminum with a painted polyester resin on top of it as its exterior. So what you see at this point in furniture design is artists beginning to using non-traditional material. Who would ever think that you should use aluminum that reflects like plain design or machine-like designs in furniture, which is quite cool. All right, so first significance, please, non-traditional materials for furniture design. non-traditional materials for furniture design. All right, going on from there, to achieve the level of precision that you see here, notice that there's no flat lines here at all. It's perfectly curved, and there's no indentation. There's no indentation, I was going to say, or indication, or any sense of hammering on the material at all. So Mark used thin sheets of pure aluminum, which were more malleable than an alloy of aluminum. Rather than use, apparently they used to use sandbags for hammering out very organic shapes. But what he did is he actually used, and let me give you an idea of what he's using here. He actually uses fiberglass, and then he molds it, okay? So he molds the fiberglass from the Lockheed's form purely for hammering the aluminum panels, but it does remain in the core itself. So this helped to achieve precise contours and allowed the panels to be put together relatively easily. So each had to be individually cut and filed to fit. Let me back up for a second and let me show you some details here. For this reason, each Lockheed lounge is unique. Each one of them is unique because that form has to, the fiberglass form has to be created, and then the individual aluminum sheets have to be welded to the form. And so then therefore what you have is a very unique individualized piece. So another significance, please, is that it's handmade, and so each piece is unique. It's handmade, so each piece is unique. And because each piece is riveted, and because they're using a hand hammering technique, what you also have then therefore is new innovation, because he's actually using non-traditional techniques. So another significance, please, is that innovative is that he's using non-traditional techniques. Innovative is that he's using non-traditional techniques. So the Lockheed Lounge, therefore, is very seminal, very unique. It is a work of highly sculptural jet age influence, so fuselage-like influence. It has a globular design, essentially that set a precedent for design that follows mechanism itself, the ideas of machines. For what is interesting here, though, is that according to one critic, he said that the Lockheed Lounge is utterly unusable. I would disagree. I would totally use it. Maybe not on a cold winter's day, but certainly on a warm summer's day. So the realization of his image of a fluid metallic form, like a giant blob of mercury, end quote, was based loosely, quote, very loosely, on an 18th century chaise lounge that he had seen in reproductions of French paintings. So Newsom made it himself in a couple of miserable months, he said, of hammering hundreds of aluminum panels onto a homemade fiberglass mold. And let me show you that view again here. After the Lockheed Lounge was exhibited at a Sydney gallery, photographs of it appeared in magazines all over the world. The Lockheed Lounge is made from ultra-industrial aluminum. Again, it's pure aluminum, not an alloy, what makes it more easily bendable. So it is said to, quote, be riveted into a voluptuous, body-hugging form that suggests that the seat with its slick metal surface is actually quite comfortable and cozy. And quite honestly, if we can use the term sexy when applied to furniture, I think this is it. So earlier in 2006, his 20-year-old Lockheed Lounge sold at an auction house for $968,000. That was at Sotheby's, in New York City. Interesting, I actually had a friend that was working there at the time. And it set a record for the highest price paid in history for furniture by a living designer. He was 42 at the time. All right, so another significance, please. It is set the highest record for a furniture design. Set the highest record for a price for furniture design. I think that's quite cool. I don't know, guys. Do you love it or do you hate it? And it's my understanding that it has to constantly be polished. There's only a few of these in the world for obvious reasons, but that it has to constantly be polished because of the aluminum taking on a patina after a while. Interesting, right? I love it. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. Maybe not very comfy, but absolutely gorgeous nonetheless. A furniture for looking at, right? Furniture as art. All right, so let's move on. So these are a couple other pieces by him, just to let you know. Really, really fun pieces, very organic shapes that he uses. You probably have seen something very similar to this. In fact, my daughter, when she was a baby, was sitting in a chair called a bumpo. You might have heard of a bumpo before, and it literally is cut out to have little shapes for the baby's legs to fit into. So definitely derived from this form here, but a really, really fun pieces, really unusual and almost biomorphic in shape, almost looking like organic living forms, aren't they? Pretty cool stuff. I love them. All right, so let's move on to your next piece. And this is the Guggenheim Museum at Bilbao. Talk about biomorphic shapes. This certainly has it. So this was designed by a man named Frank Gehry, and we've talked about him briefly in class before. And this is known as deconstructionist style, or the deconstructionist period, so to speak. Deconstructionism is an actual term, or deconstructionist is a term that applies to buildings and design that uses very odd angles, almost looks like it's falling apart, that it's deconstructing, that it's exploding or imploding, and it has that very, very strong, very non-traditional approach. It's very dramatic, a little bit disturbing to look at, and very antithetical to what we think of as the typical definition for architecture. So he was actually also very, very inspired by abstract art and cubism. So I'd like you to know that for significance, please. Influenced by cubism. Influenced by cubism. Technically, cubism is not abstract. So if you've taken the 106 class with me, or even the modern art class with me, you know this, but nevertheless, influence of cubism. Now, this museum is actually located in Bilbao, which is Spain, and he was asked by the Guggenheim family to create a building for their new museum that was going to be located here in Spain. He went to the site and he was actually noticing that around the Nervion River that you see here were lots of industries that were still very, very much thriving and full of shipyards as well. So he was influenced by the industrial history of this area. And so then therefore he decided to use metal for his form. This building set the precedent of his curving biomorphic forms, but also what's interesting is that this building has really set the standard for many, many biomorphic organic design as well as architectural forms. So the building itself combines the geometry of classical modernism with the organic feeling of expressionist architecture. He actually designed the museum to resemble a metal flower rising up from the riverfront because there were lilies, water lilies, that actually grow on the site. So I would like you to know for another significance, please, is that he was influenced by Bilbao's industrial history, and Bilbao is spelled right here on your slide here, influenced by Bilbao's industrial history and the water lilies that grow there. Influenced by Bilbao's industrial history and by the water lilies that grow there. So what he does is he actually designs not with the traditional CAD architectural software that normally architects and designers will use. He actually used a software program that's called CATIA, C-A-T-I-A. And what it is used for is actually for the aerospace industry in designing sculptural models into specifications for manufacture for airplanes, which is interesting. So what's also interesting with his approach, and there's a nighttime scene. Goodness, isn't it gorgeous? Absolutely gorgeous. Here's a detail of those sheets, those metal sheets. By the way, made by titanium, if you're interested. It looks like aluminum, but it's actually titanium. And here's an interior view. I'm going to come to this in a second. So what he actually does is he actually will talk with the people that he wants to design for, and then he will literally make this random 2-second sketch. And then he will look at that sketch and hand it over to the people that he's designing for and say, there's your museum. And of course they say, yeah, you're kind of nutty. But then guys, if you look at it, then he starts working with the CATIA design, and look how it begins to look like this, right? Pretty sweet. And then after that, you begin to see it physically realized. Isn't that amazing? So he begins with a simple, very gestural sketch and then makes it physically manifest through the use of CATIA software. Absolutely mind-blowing, isn't it? So let me show you another vision, or excuse me, another view of it. So what you're looking at here is how the building itself takes on the footprint of the area that it's on. So you have the entry steps here. The river is over here. You have galleries for the art museum pieces themselves, the atrium, more galleries here, and actually a little bit of a boat gallery in through here, and you can see parking spaces in through here and here. So the interior spaces, sorry for my text showing through right here, the interior spaces also kind of reflect that curving, undulating feeling of the exterior. However, despite the fact that it has these unusual sculpture here, and it allows for very large sculptures, it also creates spaces at the bottom here. You can see again that those kind of palm fronds that we saw with the upper level sculpture coming down here. He also uses the unusual textures in different materials such as stucco, as well as the titanium and even stone here. So he uses an unusual array of materials that not only includes Spanish limestone cubes, but also stucco as well as metal. So another significance, please, is that he uses an unusual differing, let me say that again, guys, sorry, I get lost in my thoughts here. So he's known for using materials that are very, let me try that again. So he uses these materials that normally do not go together, like the stucco, like the limestone, like the titanium, and even glass that you see in through here. And then he uses those materials to, interestingly, seem to not go together, but also seem to go together as well. So another significance I'd like you to know is that he uses materials that juxtapose one another. Okay, uses materials that juxtapose one another. They work together and they don't work together. It's an interesting mix, and you can see that here. Again, glass and stucco, titanium, the marble. You can certainly see that on the interior gallery here, though, is that he removes those different textural ideas and relies more on a traditional white box space of what we normally see in art museums as well. So it's an interesting mix of the old and the new. But goodness, that titanium is absolutely amazing, isn't it? All right. So another significance, please, is that he's known for his organic, non-traditional structures. Again, known for his organic, non-traditional structures, and they really set a precedent from this point on about what buildings can look like and the forms that they should follow. Very, very different. So now we're going to move on to chapter 2's materials, and the first image that I'm going to show you, is actually, and there's another inside image of the Bilbao, sorry. Again, you see those interesting mixes of materials and different shapes that are used. All right, so the chapter number 22, the title for chapter 22 is Design on a New Playing Field, and we begin to see shapes that have not been used before, in part due to Gary's influence. So the very first one I'm going to show you is a very interesting design, and it's focusing primarily on the staircase of what is known as the Bird's Nest Stadium. Now, you might remember the Bird's Nest Stadium that was created for the 2008 Summer Olympics that were held in China, for those of you that are old enough to remember. And your architects are Herzog and de Meuron. Now, for this particular piece, you guys can see that again we have that kind of deconstructionist feeling of things falling apart, things falling inward, things imploding, and things exploding. It is a masterpiece of deconstructionist design, just as much as Frank Gehry's Bilbao Museum as well. So I'd like you to know that for significance, please, is that it's a masterpiece of deconstructionist design. Masterpiece of deconstructionist design. But interestingly, too, it was built for a temporary reason. It was built for the 2008 Summer Olympics that were held in China. So I would like to have you know that for another significance, please. Built for the 2008 Summer Olympics in China. Let me give you another view. Now, do you recognize it? All right, again, built for the 2008 Summer Olympics that were held in China. So interestingly, here we have yet another structure that that was designed by someone who is very influenced by sculpture, but also by previous architecture, such as Gary that you saw before. So the well-known artist Ai Weiwei was actually very, very involved in the design of the structure itself. If you don't know Ai Weiwei as a well-known fine artist of this time, you should look him up. His last name is Weiwei, and he is very, very interested in working with Chinese traditions, but also breaking and sometimes literally breaking those traditions. And he tends to work with Chinese ideas of ceramics. So this structure is actually known as the Bird's Nest Stadium, and sometimes you'll just simply hear it called the Olympic Stadium of China. It's very, very different. So what essentially Herzog and de Meuron essentially created was a facade that was created via intersecting columns and trusses that are bent at unusual angles. You will not see many of these columns that are vertical at all. In fact, quite honestly, as I'm looking at this, I see one or two, maybe three verticals. And so then everything else is at these unusual angles. So another significance I'd like you to know is that the nest shape is created by unusual angles of columns and trusses. Okay, the nest shape is created by unusual angles of trusses, Trusses, and columns. Those are the elements that hold up the building. But what's interesting is that the building is actually inside this nest and is actually disconnected from the nest itself. So with the huge focus on open spaces between those trusses and columns, it creates this very, very open air feeling, very, very, very different than what we think of as traditional ideas of architecture. Let me give you another view. This is the exterior view up high with an aerial view, probably obviously either of a helicopter or probably more accurate today of a drone. Now you can actually see the top portions are actually covered, but interestingly, very, very influenced by the Colosseum. Way back to our ancient Roman discussions, you see this open space here that allows much natural light to come into this space. Pretty cool, right? So it defies a traditional definition of architecture because it appears to be lightweight and transparent, and at night, and here's some closer views for you. At night, when the lights are lit, it actually takes on this very transparent and very, very warm glow. Here's the interior space here. The openness not only allows for heat to escape, but also allows that kind of, just like with the Colosseum, this kind of almost like a spotlight of natural light shining in on the action that's on the playing field. So you can see that it's made up of solar panels installed on 12 main entrances that supply energy. We also see the upper levels include restaurants, shops, cinemas, and a health club. Underground are storage for training and storage, and also office areas and car parking. The outer membrane that I showed you at the top actually includes fluorocarbon-based polymer sheeting to protect the people inside from the elements. And sorry, you're going to hear a train going by my house right now. And the inner membrane is actually made of Teflon that helps increase the flow of good acoustics. The steel skeleton is made out of 40,000 tons of welded steel frames optimized to withstand earthquakes, which you have to have in China. So you can go on and spend some more time here by pausing the lecture if you'd like to look at more of the details of the building itself. Here's a view of it at night. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Absolutely beautiful. And as with many of these pieces that you've seen this semester, it was built only for a temporary purpose, which I think is kind of fascinating. So another significance I'd like you to know for the structure, guys, is that it defies a traditional definition of architecture. Again, it defies the traditional definition of architecture. What do you think? Pretty cool. I especially love this view here where you can see exactly how open it really is. It creates this open sense of flow and space, and to be in it would have been a great view. By the way, this is actually a photograph. It's not a digitally produced photograph, but it is a photograph that has been digitally altered to heighten the effect a little bit. So it almost looks like it's been taken with a little bit of a fisheye lens, doesn't it? So then you have this design that you have to literally work around the idea of everyone having a clear view. So let's throw in one last significance, please, is that it was influenced by the Colosseum. Influenced by the Colosseum. When I say the Colosseum, I'm obviously talking about the Colosseum built in the ancient Roman period. Colosseum, for those of you that can't remember, Colosseum. Yep, I was reading your mind. Colosseum. So let's move on to a building that was made for you fashionistas, and that is actually the Prada flagship store that's located in New York City. Again, your book does not show, to me, in my opinion, a good view of the interior space here. So I'm showing you a slightly different image. So this is the Prada flagship store. I'm sure that all of you ladies have heard of Prada bags before, if you know your high-end purses, and they also are great for fashion designers as well. So this was actually built by an architect and designer whose name is Rem Koolhaas, and the date of this is 2001. It was made for $40 million, and it includes 23,000 square feet of retail space in New York City. So even by New York City standards, the sum was certainly large enough to create a great deal of interest in the flagship store for this very, very well-known design house. All right, so well before it opened, it was already receiving lots of buzz. For a company that was at the time $785 million in debt, it tried, unfortunately, unsuccessfully, by going public on several different occasions. And what this was meant to be was an attention-grabbing building that would then increase the revenue and the popularity of the brand once again. Prada was very, very popular in the 90s, but it began to start to be less popular at the time. It has increased a little bit, but not to the point that it once had. So the design for the store, which opened in December of 2001, had a grand opening event that actually had a celebrity list and even included then New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. Of course, technology has moved on, as does Prada, but the New York epicenter, the first of its kind, set an entirely new era for shopping, a new idea of what retail shopping could be like, one in which selling ideas is as important as selling a pair of shoes. So another significance, please, is that it was innovative and that it created a new idea of retail shopping. Innovative is that it created a new idea of what retail shopping could be. And that involved not only shopping for high-end materials, but also shopping in a high-end designed structure itself. If you have ever been in one of the flagship stores for Apple products, you know what I'm talking about. Even when you go into the Apple design store in Woodland Mall, there's something very streamlined and very cool about this space. So this starts happening around the year 2000 or so. So the 23,000 square foot area is distributed between the ground floor and a basement of the building as a means to naturally connect to the large basement area of shopping, but also as a guide for customers. What you do is you come in, as you see the people here, and then you come in here, and then what's interesting is that this space actually innovates and it continues on to a wave that obviously you can't climb up, so then you continue to go down. So this is from the stairs that we're at here, and then you go down, okay, and then you turn to the right to go into further retail space. In fact, as you guys can see here, even the stairs themselves are used for retail space, not only with mannequins, but also setups for shoes that they're also well known for using, and for their bags. This space that you see right here, you can see a little bit of the edge right here. It actually opens up not only for DJs who will spin, so to speak, while you are shopping, but also a place for more design space, but also even for concerts that are held there. So it is essentially considered an invisible part of the store until it's opened up, and the floors themselves creating a juxtaposition from the geometric shapes of the stairs themselves to this wave creates this interesting juxtaposition between geometric shapes to the curvilinear wave, and it literally is called the big wave, which is interesting. So another significance I'd like you to know is that it has an innovative shape with the wave, okay? Innovative shape with the wave. It literally transforms the traditional shape of what you would see in a retail store. Innovative is this wave shape. So the oversized stair made of zebra wood that you're seeing here is used in an informal display space where people can try on shoes or browse the bags and other accessories. But with the push of a button, an event platform literally rotates out of the opposite part of the wave, turning the stair into an auditorium for performances, lectures, even film productions, which is quite cool. And so then therefore the stairs actually become seating for those events. So the large spaces that you see here in other areas, notice that you have almost like a temporary wallpaper that you see here, and then it's changed into other spaces here. You see people coming down, and you will actually see, like I said, retail space here, but also people will sit here and talk about the designs. You see how it's been transformed here as well, and yet another display on the wall here. The large spaces that you see here for display are actually suspended from an overhead track system and create singularly shopping shapes, inverted, a sense of an inversion idea of retail space, and also create a feeling of what the store calls a hanging city. So it really changes the way that product is displayed as well. And so another significance, please, is it is an innovation in how product is displayed. It's an innovation in how product is displayed. So you can literally see how this actually holds up the structure in almost like a suspension style space, because you can actually see through these stairs here if they want to change that around. And let me see if there's anything I want you to know about this space. Let me go back here again. And here you can see that the wood actually covers that up again. So it uses a translucent wall of polycarbonate that covers the existing brick wall of the building and establishes a dialogue between old and new. You can see that here, but also the other space, the mural of wallpaper that I showed you here, changes and allows for a rapid change of the environment. So another significance, please, is that it allows for a constantly changing environment. Again, that wall, the wallpaper wall that you see here, allows for a constantly changing environment. And guys, I'm sorry, I'm kind of tripping over my words a little bit, trying to rely on what I know in my head, but also kind of moving back and forth between my notes. So given that, what's also cool is that the elevator that you can see, let me go back to my original view, right through there. The elevator is fully glazed elevator and displays bags and accessories and gives the customer the possibility to shop while actually traveling through the different floors that you see here. It descends into a lounge located underneath the wave where the main dressing rooms are visible from displays that include, again, very futuristic designs. It's pretty cool. By the way, Prada actually originated in Milan, and even in Milan, it is known for its unusual display stores. So another significance, please, very futuristic design. Very futuristic design. And it even has a VIP entrance for those celebrities that want to shop in private, which I think is kind of fun. All right. However, let's move to a completely different kind of design, and that is one that is led by a very well-known architect who unfortunately passed away in 2016, and her name is Zaha Hadid. Zaha Hadid. So Zaha Hadid was actually born in Iraq, and she studied in London at the Architectural Association School of Architecture. She has won, before she passed, and even after she passed, many, many prizes for design and for architecture. She was the first woman to win the Pritzker Prize in Architecture, which was then in 2004, and that is a prize that I mentioned earlier on in this lecture. She also won the prestigious British Sterling Architectural Prize in 2010, but also again in 2011. And Queen Elizabeth II of England actually gave her the title of Dame because of her architectural innovations and contributions. She opened her own firm, Zaha Hadid Architecture, in London in 1980. She actually has taught architecture at the University of Chicago, at Harvard, Cambridge, the University of Illinois, at Columbia, and even at the Hochschule für Bildende Künste, which literally means the High School for Architectural Art that is located in Germany. She is known for her imaginative and dramatic designs. And so, guys, that will be your first significance, please. She is known for her imaginative and dramatic designs. Known for her imaginative and dramatic designs. She not only works in design, she also works in architecture. And quite honestly, she turned towards industrial design, handbag design, and even shoe design. Goodness, ladies, if you're interested in shoes, and gentlemen, if you're interested in very unusual shoes, look up her shoe designs. They are really, really cool. And quite honestly, one of them was actually worn by Lady Gaga, which I think is cool. The Met Museum actually says she was, quote, unconventional in her creation of buildings that seem to define the logic of construction. If you're thinking deconstructionist, you are right. She is known as a deconstructionist architect. So Zaha Hadid was also very influenced by Kazimir Malevich's avant-garde art. And if you've taken the 106 class with me, and again the modern art class with me, you know very, very well Kazimir Malevich's abstract designs that focus on geometric shapes. So a significance I'd like you to know as well is that she was influenced by Malevich's abstract art. And I will spell Malevich for you. Influenced by Malevich's abstract art. Malevich is Malevich. Malevich. So Malevich himself, was a pioneer of geometric abstract art and the originator of an avant-garde and suprematist movements, if you've heard about that. So Malevich's art also very, very much falls into the idea of deconstructionism. Deconstructionism, as I said before, focuses on manipulating a structure's surface and ultimately embodies unpredictability and what is known as controlled chaos. Again, that feeling that things are falling down, things are exploding, things are imploding. It's very futuristic. In fact, if you look at this, this almost looks like it would, rather than be a building for the BMW, yes, the BMW car company, the central building of which manufacturing and offices kind of fall away. And sorry, this is the central building. And so the production building, as well as the offices, central offices themselves, actually kind of come out away from this building. The building itself, when you look at this, almost looks more like the interior of a space building that we see in futuristic movies about space exploration, right? It looks almost like a starship or something. Think Star Trek, think anything that you can think of, put it in here, all right? Star Wars, you name it. So her architecture is known for exhibiting fluidity and movement, and even though there's very few curving lines, her works do include usually more curving lines. Let me show you the building that you see here that is also very geometric, by the way. This is not the exterior of the BMW building. This is actually a building that is located on MSU's campus that you might have seen before. So again, notice how it looks like it's falling down and it looks like it's exploding and coming out towards you. So give you an idea of what she's known for looking for. But let's go back to the BMW building here. So this is the exterior view here, and yet another interior view here. So she is known for embracing her architectural freedom and sees architecture as she tries to rewrite the script of architecture and to create a new life for architecture so that architecture can be seen in a new way. So the building itself acts as the main nerve center of the plant, joining together the three main production facilities of the structure, or excuse me, of the company itself. Cars actually move overhead above the structure, but also are located close by in the parking lot that you see here in the upper image that you see here. And not only is she creating a sense of the cars themselves by leaning forward and sense of movement in the building itself, but also it creates a sense of all elements of this building come together and all workers to come together to design these wonderfully designed vehicles. So the open office spaces date back to the feel of American 1970s, where you had a positive influence on workflow, of teamwork, and also an open exchange of ideas. Here you see a little bit more of those curves that she's known for. So the building itself is meant to have a positive influence on workflow and on teamwork and on an exchange of ideas. The building itself has been thought of as a, quote, communication knot, fueling all movement around the manufacturing complex through a space that transcends conventional white-collar, blue-collar, special divisions. So here what she does is she creates a building that combines blue-collar workers, those that are actually manufacturing the buildings, along with white-collar employees, the ones who actually run the company, and they work side by side throughout the building, and essentially they meet at the centrally located restaurant where they all eat together. So another significance, please, is it is a centrally located building that also combines white-collar and blue-collar divisions. Okay, or essentially eliminates, let's say that instead. It's a central building that eliminates white collar and blue collar divisions. And collar, C-O-L-L-A-R, again referring to the people that work there, not only the higher ups, the owners, the innovators, but also those who actually create the vehicles themselves. All right, let me see if there's anything else I want you to know about this. So here's a great quote by Zaha Hadid. She said this, quote, "Architecture is about well-being. People should feel good, whether it's in a school or in a hospital or in an office building or in a plant or in a house. That feel-good situation is very critical," end quote. So then she basically goes on to say, great architecture is not about how complex, how abstract, or how extravagant the structure is, but the amalgamation, let me go back to that original view, the amalgamation of innovation, function, and comfort. And essentially, Zaha Hadid has essentially set out to accomplish those goals, and in fact, she does succeed at those goals. So even though she died at too young of an age by way of a heart attack in 2016, she has already been set in stone as someone who innovates architecture, has led our way into 21st century architecture, but also as someone who broke the gender boundaries of architectural design. So in 2016, after her death, she was posthumously awarded the Royal Gold Medal from the Royal Institute of British Architects. She was the only woman to receive it. So another significance I'd like you to know is that she broke her gender's boundaries in architecture. She broke her gender's boundaries in architecture. All right, so let's move on to our last building of the lecture, and that is something that is just a stone's throw away from Michigan, across the pond, so to speak. So you are now looking at a building, the interior of a building known as the Quadracci Pavilion, and it was created by a very well-known architect whose name is Santiago Calatrava. Calatrava was a Spanish architect and engineer, and he is known for his architectural experimentations. He is very influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright and his idea of the cantilever, and he's also very influenced by kinetic sculpture. Kinetic sculpture is sculpture that actually moves. I want you to think about not the Calder that you might know, the Grand Vitesse that is located here in Grand Rapids, but actually Calders, what we will call mobiles. They literally are called mobiles because they actually move. So think about the sculptures that hung above a baby's crib. Those are called mobiles. Calder called them mobiles. They are kinetic sculpture because they actually move. So, significance, please. He is influenced by Wright's cantilevers. Okay, Frank Lloyd Wright with a W. He's influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright's cantilevers, but also influenced by kinetic sculpture. Kinetic is Kinetic. Kinetic, and we'll see those influences here in a second. He's also very influenced by, therefore, art, but also nature, and his work oftentimes appears very organic, very curving forms, and oftentimes looks very sculptural. So the primary gallery that you see here was also very influenced by Eero Saarinen's designs, and it recalls the TWA terminal, as you guys can see here. So the Quadracci Pavilion itself essentially is the iconic sculptural addition to the Milwaukee Art Museum that was designed again by Calatrava with addition by Eero Saarinen. So this is one view that you see here, and this is the main area that you come into when you come into the art museum. It's literally located on Lake Michigan, and oftentimes this space is filled up with sculpture and used for exhibition spaces. But let me show you some other views here. Let me show you the exterior view. Oops, sorry. Here is another interior view. Look at that, very futuristic, very much relying on white for use with an art museum, and it is absolutely amazing. So I'd like you to know, for significance, please, it is the modern addition to the Milwaukee Art Museum. It is a modern addition to the Milwaukee Art Museum. Excuse me. So the Spanish architect was inspired by the dramatic original building of Eero Saarinen, and very, very much influenced by the topography of the city of Milwaukee. It includes 142,000 square foot, and it was completed in 2001. It houses a grand reception hall that you see here, but it also includes an auditorium, a large exhibition space, a store, 2 cafes, and also includes parking. It has cutting-edge technology that we will look at here in a moment, but also old world craftsmanship that went into creating a graceful building, which was largely made by using pour-in-place concrete and one-of-a-kind wooden forms. So all of this, guys, is pour-in-place concrete, and again, it might remind you of the TWA terminal that we saw before. Here's another view. He uses a parabolic arch here, which distributes weight actually much better than a rounded arch. So this is the walkway, the gallery that goes into the main portion of the museum. The museum itself, the main portion of the museum, actually very, very much dates before the Quadracci addition. So it uses flying buttresses, pointed arches, ribbed vaults, a central nave topped by a 90-foot high glass roof, and it is his interpretation of what he says is a Gothic cathedral. So it is average size. A 2-story family home could fit comfortably inside of the space that you see here. And the hall's chancel is shaped to the idea of the prow of a ship, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook Lake Michigan. Let me show you the exterior now. Look at that. Isn't that cool? So you and I were just looking out into this space here, but then look at the space that you see here. And this is the part that looks out to the lake that you see here. Now, this is not the greatest JPEG, so forgive me, okay? And then we were looking at the gallery that leads into the main part of the museum, which is quite honestly quite boring in comparison. So let's go on to what is very cool about this building. Even though you can see it barely, what you see are vertical lines that lead to this element that's right here, and then that goes on and it connects to what looks like birds' wings here. Now what's really cool is that during the sun, it very much, it's a solar system that actually moves the wings up and down depending on the day and depending on the sun exposure. This is the old museum here that you see here. Interesting, right? Very different. You can see how people oftentimes mistake this as the museum itself, which in fact this is a museum. This white area is just the new addition that you see. So the museum's signature wings that you see right here use what is called the Brise-Soleil system. It is a form that is a movable sunscreen with a 270-foot wingspan. The Brise-Soleil is made up of 72 steel fins. Let me give you an idea. Isn't that cool? 72 steel fins that range in length from 26 to 105 feet. The entire structure weighs up to 90 tons, and it takes 3.5 minutes for the wings to open or close. Sensors on the fins continually monitor wind speed and direction, so when winds exceed 23 miles per hour for more than 3 seconds, the wings actually close. Pretty sweet, right? So this is a time-lapse photograph that actually shows how the wings close during the particular times of day and of course with wind. And you guys can see all the different elements of the wing here. So this is where that kinetic sculpture, that movable sculpture come in. So another significance I'd like you to know is that the wings are affected by sun and wind. Okay, the wings are affected by sun and wind and move accordingly. Make sure you put that in with your significance and move accordingly. According to Santiago Calatrava, the Quadracci Pavilion's design, quote, responds to the culture of the lake, the sailboats, the weather, the sense of motion and change. And in the crowning element of the Brise-Soleil, he stated, the building's form is at once formal, completing the composition, functional, meaning controlling the level of light, symbolic, meaning that it's open to welcome visitors, and iconic, meaning that creates a memorable image for the museum and the city. It's interesting because when you have and hear of people going to the museum, you oftentimes will hear them talk about the museum's design and the Brise-Soleil before they ever talk about the art that's in the museum. So it almost precedes the art itself. Isn't that cool? So this gives you a little bit more detail. And again, if you'd like to read the whole thing, take a second and pause the video so you can read it. But you can see literally the creation of the structure itself relies on a rotating spine that then collapses the wings or brings them open again. These are fins here. This is what resembles the prow of a ship right here that I talked about before. So another significance, please, is that the Brise-Soleil that you can see spelled here, the Brise-Soleil reflects wings and the prow of a ship. Again, the Brise-Soleil, okay, shows the influence of wings and the prow, spelled right here, of a ship. Pretty sweet, right? So you and I were down here looking out towards the lake earlier on in, there we go, in that view. So you're literally looking up above and where you would be able to see the wings come in and open up. Pretty sweet, right? It's a beautiful space. Very futuristic design. So let me give you a couple, actually no, I think we're good. We have 3 significances. I think we are good. All right, pretty sweet though, right? Isn't it? Again, here's some more information for you if you are interested in learning more about the architectural details of the building itself. Again, take a second and pause it if you'd like. And this is a bad JPEG, but how it kind of fits into the larger context of a cityscape photograph that you see here. Just beautifully done. Here's a great view of it right here. Very futuristic in its design. So again, this essentially changes, and then you have the rotating elements right through here that help open that up or close it down. Another view here. Really cool design. So let's move on to some furniture design, shall we? So let's look at the Cabbage chair that you see here. This was designed by a Japanese designer, furniture designer, whose name was Nendo. Just goes by one name, Nendo. And this is called the Cabbage chair. The date on this is 2009, practically yesterday, right? So it is actually made of waste paper that was created from the pleated fabric industry. So the paper itself is wrapped into a cylinder, vertical cylinder. Think about rolling it up into a cylinder, and then it is cut vertically halfway down on the side so that the layers can be peeled back one at a time. So literally you have a cylinder of all these papers that are pleated, and then you cut right through here, and you cut all the way to the center of the cylinder, and then each layer is pulled back. It very much reminds me of peeling off the outer husks of a corn cob. Do you see that as well? Pretty cool, right? So I'm going to quote you directly from the Nendo site because I think they say it better, even more so than any other way I've heard it talked about. So the Nendo Cabbage chair was created for an exhibition that was curated by Issey Miyake. Issey Miyake, if you know him, he is a furniture designer. He is a fashion designer, and it commemorated the first anniversary of the 2121 design site in Roppongi, which is located in Tokyo. So Miyake asked the furniture designer, Nendo, to make furniture out of the pleated paper that is produced in mass amounts during the process of making pleated fabric, and that is usually abandoned as an unwanted byproduct. So what's cool is that what you see is essentially a repurpose of a byproduct that is usually, again, abandoned during the creation of essentially haute couture, high fashion. So another significance I'd like you to know is that it is a repurposing of an unwanted byproduct of the fashion industry. Again, it's repurposing of an unwanted byproduct of the fashion industry. Pretty cool, right? So the solution that Nendo himself then came up was to take a roll of pleated paper and then transform it into small chairs that appears naturally as you peel away its outside layers, one layer at a time. So resins are actually added during the original paper production process itself, which adds strength and the ability to remember the forms that they're folded into. And so the pleats themselves give the chair elasticity and a springy resilience for an overall effect that looks almost rough but gives a sense to the person who sits in it a soft and comfortable seating experience. I have no idea how long you can sit in them. I've never even seen one in person, but I think it's a pretty cool idea, isn't it? So another significance I'd like you to know is that resins add strength and comfort to the seat. Resin, R-E-S-I-N, okay, resin creates a sense of strength or adds strength and comfort to the sitter, okay, and to the chair itself. Since the production was so simple, Nendo says that we thought that eventually the chair could be shipped as one compact roll for the user to cut open and peel back at home. How cool is that? How many of you would do that? I would love that because essentially you become the final creator of the chair itself. The chair has no internal structure. It is not finished, and it is assembled without nails or screws. This primitive design responds gently to fabrication and distribution costs and environmental concerns, the kinds of issues that face our 21st century selves. Thus, according to the site, quote, the Cabbage chair fits active, optimistic, and moving forward 21st century people, the kind of people who, according to Miyake himself, says they just don't just wear clothes, but they shed their skin, which is interesting and kind of creepy. But anyway, so another significance I'd like you to know is that it has no internal structure. It's made without nails or screws. No internal structure. It's made without nails or screws. I think it's fun, don't you? Obviously, absolutely no back support, but for a temporary sitting situation, kind of fun. And it almost has this kind of amoeba-like form, doesn't it? Or even I would like to say, goodness, even shapes that you see that flow and ebb with the curving tide that you see in the bottom of the ocean. Pretty cool looking stuff, very organic forms. And as you guys can see, much of our discussion today is about organic forms, whether it be in furniture, whether it be in design, or whether it even be in architecture. So let's move on to something else that is not as organic, but quite interesting. And this is called the C2 chair from 2004. And it was made by a man named Patrick Juin. This is, quite interestingly, the very first three-dimensionally printed chair. Yep, that's a significance. It is the first 3D printed chair. Yep, using a 3D printer. I actually had a student yesterday that was talking to me about his 3D printing designs that he used to make essentially pirate Star Wars figures, which I think is kind of fun. So again, guys, for significance, the first 3D printed chair. So Patrick Juin is one of the major protagonists of contemporary design of French and international architecture and quite honestly, furniture design. So in 2004, Juin became the first to essentially experiment with 3D design and essentially create the first successful chair, which until then had only been used for small scale models in plastic. So Juin took the entire process to a previously unheard of level, creating forms that were once thought impossible to produce. The very solid, even though it doesn't look solid at all, chair was among the first designs and is reminiscent of blades of grass waving in the wind and weaving together. So another significance, please, is that it's influenced by blades of grass in the wind. Okay, influenced by blades of grass in the wind. So quoting directly from the auction house known as Phillips, think of Sotheby's, but this is called Phillips. In 2004, French designer Patrick Juin discovered the then highly experimental manufacturing technique of additive layers of fabrication and began collaborating with the pioneering Belgian company Materialise. These collaborations resulted in a groundbreaking collaboration called Solid furniture. Up until that moment, these manufacturing techniques, then referred to as rapid prototyping, had only been used for small-scale models. The processes were used primarily to create prototypes of objects to be eventually manufactured into other materials. Juin's premier collection, True Artifacts of a New Age, brought to light the endless possibilities and great potential that these remarkable manufacturing techniques could add to the repertoire of furniture design and design in general. So I'd like you to know that for another significance, please, is that he exploits the possibilities of 3D printing. He exploits the possibilities of 3D printing. So the chair shown here was created by means of an industrial prototyping technique that's called stereolithography, a process resulting in the so-called printing of three-dimensional structures from a computer-aided design model. The designer's computer drawing is first mapped out into very thin layers. Each layer then slowly materializes when a laser, drawing that slice through either a resin or polyamide powder, photochemically hardens the material. The process is continuously repeated until the complete model is executed, exactly realizing in three-dimensional form the original design. Stereolithography allows for the realization of designs that would be virtually impossible to create using more traditional manual skills. Pretty sweet. The C2 solid chair is in the permanent collection of the Museum of Modern Art in New York City and is very, very influential to furniture design today. So another significance, please, very influential design. Very influential design. Can you imagine just now if you were in the future have your own 3D printer in your own house and literally be able to just buy a design from a furniture designer and then print it off at home? What kind of change would that bring about to interior design and furniture design? How cool would that be? And guys, we are looking at that very, very soon, sooner than we think. Probably, I would not be surprised that by the time that you're my age, I'm 54-ish. I'm old enough to be your older sister, right? By this time, when you're this age, I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is a possibility. So then let's go on to another really cool chair, and that is oops, sorry, forgot to give you a couple others. How cool to be able to even choose your own color for the chair itself. What color would you choose? I'm kind of liking the red. All right. So let's look at our last design, and this is called the Go chair. It is created by a man named Ross Lovegrove. The date on this is 1998 to 2001. So Ross Lovegrove studied design at Manchester Polytechnic and subsequently trained at the Royal College of Art, both located in London. He contributed to the design of the Sony Walkman so long ago. I remember having one myself and thinking how cool I was. Believe it or not, I had a Walkman that you can actually put and plug into your car, so it would actually make it turn into a CD player. Yep, because that was the new hip innovation of music design at the time, and I kid you not, it cost me about $300. So today you can buy the equivalent, a disc player today, for literally like 15 bucks. In fact, most people don't even buy those anymore because we all are now interested in digitally found music instead. So he also helped work on the design of Apple computers. As an in-house designer for Knoll International in Paris, Lovegrove worked on the Alessandri office system, and as a co-member of the Atelier de Nîmes, along with Philippe Starck and Jean Nouvel, he acted as a design consultant to Louis Vuitton, Cacharel, DuPont, and Hermes. If you, again, are up on your fashion, those names sound familiar to you. Now, in 1990, he created Studio X in London, and Lovegrove is inspired by forms of the natural world, the possibilities of new manufacturing techniques, and the ability to evoke an emotional response in his users. So, an icon of contemporary furniture design, the Lovegrove Go chair, as you guys can see clearly here. Let me give you another view of it. Cool, right? The Love chair is an organic form rooted in ultra-futuristic realism. The Lovegrove chair exudes fluidity, and yet there's an element of comfort there as well. It features a silver powder-coated frame, and the Go chair is stackable and lightweight, which I think is pretty cool. So a significance I'd like you to know is that it's stackable and lightweight. Stackable and lightweight. Again, aluminum, very, very light, okay? Another significance, please, influenced by abstract and organic forms. Influence of abstract and organic forms. Excuse me, going on from there. It creates a sense of the space age and a whimsical designs. Do I have another one for you? Here's some others that he designed, by the way. So I don't have more editions of the Go chair, but others that he designed. Very futuristic, very interesting. And guys, almost all of us have seen this chair before. Few of us have seen this. I haven't seen one in person, but I've seen it before. I love these chairs. These almost could fit in with mid-century modern, could they not? Even this one itself. But let's go back to the original image that you see here. Very classical. In fact, it really looks ergonomic, does it not? So it's an icon of contemporary design, but it's still kind of hard to pin down. Its organic form exudes motion and growth, but it also has a very robust frame made of aluminum magnesium, making it comfortable both inside and out. The Go chair makes a bold statement that the future of furniture design is actually happening now. And again, it's very functional because it can be stacked for spatial and storage necessities. So another significance, please, very functional design. Very functional design. I would much rather sit on something like this than some of the ugly chairs that you've seen that house a situation where you have many, many people attending maybe a concert, a church service, a lecture, etc., etc. It's pretty cool. All right, everybody, this now ends our lecture. I hope you have enjoyed the things that you've learned about for your last lecture, and thanks again for listening.